I have not walked onto a stage to Rick James in weeks. We're back in the club. Good morning, good morning. It's so wonderful to be here. It's wonderful to be in person. It's wonderful to be able to come together. Welcome to Raben. We power good work. We work with clients to make real change, impact. This was for me, an existential experiment 20 plus years ago. It was to see what a curated workforce of women and people of color, LGBTQ, the disabled, if we came together, could we be entrusted to work on the most sophisticated public policy problems and issues? And the answer is yes. I'd hoped for, but did not imagine that we would have the kind of blessings and opportunity and impact that we have, and also the ability to stand here with those of you who make that happen and say, we're just beginning. Google asked us years ago to help them figure out how to put the Equal Justice Institute online so that people around the world could see it. Google then asked us to develop a campaign, which you can't really imagine corporate America doing, but drawing attention to the fact that there's no such thing as a child prostitute, that boys and girls who are trafficked are victims. Color of Change allows us to help them develop an Afro-tech agenda and to figure out what is the African-American point of view on disinformation and what we ought to be doing about that. We have shepherded hundreds of nominees, more than 95% women and people of color, through the United States Senate. We have worked with the Catholic bishops and the ACLU and Prison Fellowship to design and effectuate a commission and then public policy to reduce prison rape. We currently staff the coalition, bipartisan coalition, to preserve the student loan forgiveness program. And we've had tens of billions of dollars forgiven, and we're proud of that. I could go on, and I won't. None of that happens without you. In particular, none of that happens with the three people we're about to hear from. I'm going to introduce my colleague, Chrissy McHenry, who runs our comms and media practice and brings an extraordinary trove of professional experience to the firm. She's been with us a while, and I learn from her every day, and I'm just so honored to be with you.
Thank you all. Thanks, Robert, for that. It was fun to hear all of what's been done, of which I've had the tiniest, played the tiniest part, but enjoyed every minute of what is now 6 years here at Raben. I'm Chrissy McHenry. As Robert said, I lead the strategic communications practice area, and we are a mighty team of really committed individuals, and we are matched by our colleagues in other practice areas across the firm. So we're glad to be here. We're here to talk about what's happened with democracy over the last 20 years. We can go up or down a few years, depending. But I want to introduce our panelists. We're joined on my far right by Tom Perez. He's the director of the White House Office of Intergovernmental Affairs. He's had a long career in public service, including chair of the Democratic National Committee, Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights at the Justice Department, and Secretary of Labor. And then also to my near right, Congressman Stephen Horsford, who is the congressman from Nevada and also the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus. So I welcome you both, and we'll get right started. So when we think 20 years back, which Robert brought us to, and think about where we were, either 2000 or loosely 2004, what have we seen since then when we think about democracy and what its challenges are and what its benefits? Start with you, Tom.
Well, you know, I tend to process this question through the lens of my experience at the Department of Justice doing civil rights work, and I do want to start out by saying thank you to Robert for all you have done. This is a remarkable space, and this is Old Homes Day with a gathering of serial activists. So thanks to all of you. You know, in 1965, when the Voting Rights Act was passed, I took a little look at that. It passed 338 to 65 in the House and 77 to 19 in the Senate. Fast forward to almost 20 years ago, the most recent reauthorization, it was 390 to 33 in the House. And by the way, one of the leaders of this was a Republican-controlled House in 2006, and one of the leaders of the effort was a guy named Jim Sensenbrenner, Republican from Wisconsin. And it passed the Senate by a very close margin, 98 to 0. 98 to 0. Then the Voting Rights Act passed the Senate. The Senate basically adopted the House bill. The House had done a lot of work documenting that while we had come a long way from 1965, we were nowhere near the mountaintop. And there were still persistent issues of people getting access to the right to vote. My worst day in the Obama administration, I had the privilege of leading the Civil Rights Division in the first term and the Labor Department the second term. By far my worst day was June of 2013, which was my last month actually at DOJ when Shelby County came out. And Chief Justice Roberts announced that we live in a new era where discrimination is a thing of the past. And Justice Ginsburg, I think, set him in his place. And the reason I bring this up is, you know, as recently as 2006, we did have bipartisan consensus that there was something wrong. And now you fast forward to January of 2021 and we have an insurrection. And we now have a presidential campaign where there are people who still deny the results of the 2020 election. So it is fair to say, and you know, when President Biden announced that he was candidate Biden, he talked about the battle for the soul of America. And he talked about what happened in Charlottesville as one of the motivating factors. And frankly, we're still at that moment. You know, our democracy continues to be on fire, and it's a five-alarm blaze. What I love about people in this room is most folks are trained to run away from fire. You know, this gentleman to my left has been running toward the fire throughout his entire career. And, you know, I come to you with both sobriety born out of these realities, but I come to you with unrelenting optimism because moments of gravest crisis in our nation have also been the moments of remarkable opportunity. I mean, I look at those two. You know, I had the privilege of leading the Labor Department. Most of the laws we enforced in the Labor Department, slight overstatement, were a product of the New Deal, a tumultuous era of the Great Depression and a global conflict. Most of the laws we enforced at the Civil Rights Division, slight overstatement, were a product of the Civil Rights Movement of the 60s. The two most tumultuous decades of the 20th century were also the 2 decades in which we made the most progress in building out our social compact. And that's what gives me optimism for the moment. And I don't think it's blind optimism, but it is, what is different now is we have a much more hostile Supreme Court. And so, you know, we have to deal with that reality. The loss of Section 5 in the Voting Rights Act was a dagger. And I could give you chapter and verse. I don't want to do that, but you've seen it. And I could literally give you examples. I'll give you one because this is in Arizona, they passed a law in 2011 to ban what they called ballot harvesting. You can't, it was a crime if you carried someone else's ballot. It was directed most notably at the Navajo Nation. The Navajo Nation is the size of West Virginia. For some people, you have to travel 2 hours to find a mailbox. And by the way, if you have a car, and there's abject poverty on the Navajo Nation. So we sent them a letter because they had to pre-clear that with us because we smelled a rat. And when we sent a letter asking for more information, they withdrew that law that they passed. Fast forward 2013, Shelby County, they no longer need Section 5 pre-clearance. What do? 2014, they passed that law. And make it a lot harder for the Native American community to vote. And again, I could give you another dozen examples of things that happened literally the day after and the week after, the year after. And so we've got a lot of work to do, but I see a lot of kernels of hope. I see a lot of litigation that is actually being successful right now, because some of these barriers that are being put in place, they're just, and so even in a hostile court environment, we are winning. You know, the election in Wisconsin was a big deal, and they're going to have fair maps. Wisconsin's a 50-50 state. You know, and if you're being honest and fair, you know, you should have an even number of members of the House, even number of members in the State House, and you had to beat the spread to win a race if you were a Democrat in Wisconsin. So there's progress being made, but make no mistake about it. And the president has talked about it, and he will continue to talk about it. Democracy is truly on the ballot, and there couldn't be a clearer difference. And it saddens me to no end to watch, you know, where we've gone on voting rights, from a consensus that we hadn't lived up to our promise to denialism. And that's the moment we live in. But we can do something, and people like Steve and others are, in fact, doing great things.
Well, I find it I find it instructive, and it is great to be here with all of you this morning, that Tom started with the focus on the Voting Rights Act and the past support, bipartisan support for voting rights in this country. Because sadly, since 2013, it's the first time in 40 years that Republicans haven't worked with Democrats to reauthorize the Voting Rights Act. And despite that obstruction, we have led the effort in the House, and now the effort by Senate Democrats to introduce and fight for the passage of the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, which obviously we just commemorated the 59th weekend of Bloody Sunday. I was in Selma, and to be with the foot soldiers, to walk over the Edmund Pettus Bridge, to remind ourselves and to recommit ourselves to the ideals of what that march was for. It was 4 months after that march that the Voting Rights Act was passed and then ultimately signed by the president. But since that time, despite bipartisan support over the years, since 2008, the election of President Barack Obama, I wonder what happened. The re-election of him in 2012, and then the Supreme Court decision and the striking of Section 5 of Shelby versus Holder really went to the core of the protections for every community. And that is what is so disturbing about this moment. And we can talk about voting rights, which is a cornerstone of democracy, but we also have to talk about the assault on public education, on the free press, on the courts, because these are also cornerstones of our democracy. And there is a very coordinated, well-funded, strategic attack on each of the cornerstones of our democracy at the very same time that we are working to advance these interests. There are those working against us. I want to shout out Harry Dunn, who is here, who helped defend our democracy on that fateful day as a U.S. Capitol Police officer on January 6th. And not only was he defending our democracy, the building of the U.S. Capitol that day, but now he's working to defend our democracy as a candidate, and that's what we need. We need more people to engage in this process, to not retreat, but to lean in, because each of us does have power in this moment, despite the attacks to erode our freedoms, to take away fundamental rights, including economic opportunity to advance our own interest. But we have to be aware of the attacks on the other side. We have to understand what their long-term game is. And yes, we need our own strategic plan. and we need to be able to work in as coordinated a way together in coalition to advance our rights, our freedoms, and economic justice as they do to try to take it away.
Yeah, no, and so actually that's where I was sort of headed next, is to think about like what is our opportunity as well as our responsibility in the face of all of this. And so we are, all of us, activists in our own way, but even going sort of beyond those of us who do this sort of for a living as a calling of sorts. What about, you know, sort of people, everyday people who are sort of feeling the pain of all of this and yet deserve so much more? How do they take action?
So I'm honored to serve as chair of the Congressional Black Caucus. When we started 52 years ago, it was 13 members, one black woman, Shirley Chisholm. Today, we have 60 members, the largest in our history. Those, out of the 60 members, 31 are black women. And we work in coalition with the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, the Congressional Asian American Pacific Islander Caucus. We are known as the Tri-Caucus. And last year, I made the decision, because of the attacks that were coming against our democracy and against race, to one, lead a national conversation on democracy and race here in Washington, D.C., to engage and convene leaders across academia, public policy, local elected officials, and constituents. But following the convening, we understood we had to get the hell out of Washington, D.C. We had to take the members directly into our communities. And so we had a summer of action kind of built off of the summer freedom movement of the civil rights era, and to engage constituents through town halls, youth forums. We did direct organizing with People for the American Way. And we talked with constituents about their power and what they could do in this moment to uplift, the cornerstones of democracy. What could they do as parents to advocate for their children at a time when people are trying to ban books, ban history, ban the true reflection of what is taught in our schools, to defund public education? What could you do as a parent? What can people do when there are attacks on banning the freedoms for women to make their own healthcare decisions? What can they do in this moment, regardless if you're in a red state like Alabama or a blue state like Nevada that has protections, but we're worried that those protections could be eroded based on a federal ban? What can we do with the free press to help both them understand their important role of uplifting stories? At the same time, media companies are laying off and eliminating journalists that reflect the diversity of the communities that they're required to report on. And what could we do to hold corporate America accountable to their own commitments around racial equity and closing the racial wealth divide and investing in tools of economic opportunity like diversity, equity, and inclusion? And what we found was the people get it, as they always do. They just want to know, what is the plan? How do I engage? Where do I go? And who do I need to focus the message on? And the more we can give people direction, and that's what I love about the Raben group. You all are strategic. You think through things comprehensively. You engage your partners across coalitions to build collaboration. You understand both the inside and the outside game. And in this moment, we need that type of strategic approach, because we are up against forces who want to take away our opportunities, our freedoms, and our rights. And we can't go back, we can't be silent, and we can't let that happen.
Lost in the aftermath of the unconscionable insurrection was data about the 2020 election that if everyone were honest, or I should maybe reframe that, if certain people were honest with themselves, because we've been honest, there should be a bipartisan celebration. In the middle of a global pandemic, we had record turnout. And by the way, again, if everyone were being honest, that record turnout was great for Republicans in some cases, great for Democrats in some cases, and great for democracy in every case. I was speaking with Leader Pelosi at the time, Speaker Pelosi at the time, almost daily. And we'd have conversations. What do you think's going to happen? You know, what's the range of, you know, what we're going to do in the House? And, you know, frankly, our conversations were about, you know, bad day, we might win a handful of seats. Good day, we're going to win a couple dozen seats. We never dreamed of 13 seats in the hole. And I'm not here to tell you that we lost because someone cheated. Their folks showed up. You know, gerrymandered seats and all that. We can have that conversation. That's a real conversation that we need to have. But the reality is, we should be having a bipartisan celebration because that is what it's about. We should debate the issues. We should make it as easy as possible for eligible people to vote, and then we must make sure that every single validly cast vote is counted. I find it really interesting right now that a certain body of people are now running a "you should vote by mail" campaign. Of course you should vote by mail because it increases turnout. I mean, one of the most just remarkably ill-advised things was to have one day to vote. You know, like, what if you work? What if you do shift work? Like, what does that do to so many people? And so I wanted to ground us in this, what should have been a celebration. And part of the issue right now, and you mentioned it in your question, is we really need to tackle the proliferation of misinformation. You saw in the New Hampshire primary robocalls purporting to be President Biden sending misinformation. That's the tip of the iceberg. And the problem in the voting context is you do nefarious things, and the reason you're incentivized to do them is someone goes to court, and then after the election's over, when the damage is done, they say, naughty, 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 don't do that again. And you sort of go, okay, and you do that again, but the damage was done. And that's why it's so important now to have the systematic reforms in place and to be prepared. I appreciate not only what the Raben group is doing, but I appreciate what the army of lawyers across America are doing, because we've got to get out there now. You know, we can't go in the aftermath of an election, and there's so many, it's a target-rich environment right now, unfortunately, for voting rights lawyers, because so many states have enacted provisions that are just frankly unconstitutional. And we've got to call them. And even under the higher standard under Section 2 and with the absence of Section 5, there are still things we can do using state law and using some of the federal tools that we have. And so a big part of, you know, you asked what we can do is we need to get out there and continue that organizing and doing it much earlier so that we are prepared and we have adjudication of issues so that we know that every valid method of voting will be put in place and every properly cast vote will indeed be counted and there's no uncertainty. Because when you continue to sow uncertainty, you sow pessimism in the system. And that is exactly what they're trying to do. And nobody should be afraid of turnout. I mean, again, 2020 being a good illustration of that. It helped both sides. And that's why, you know, everyone in this room has so many tools at your disposal. And so we've got things to do in the short run, but I also think there are other things that really ought to be considered in our democracy. You know, we're so polarized right now. One of the reasons I'm a big fan of ranked choice voting is it forces people to be nice. If every election, all you need to do in a 6-person election is get the most votes, then you become, I got my 27% base, that's all I need in that election, and I'm going to be extreme. And when you do that, I think that perverts our democracy. Things like ranked choice voting that force you as a candidate to talk to everyone, remarkable reforms, and Maine has done it. We've seen it done in a lot of mayor's races and other races, and we're starting to see it, in some of the federal races. I think we should see more of that, because I think that is a really healthy thing for our democracy, that candidates have to talk to every constituency. And there are a number of other voting reforms that we could talk about, but I don't want to hog the time.
No, this is great. So, you sort of harken back to sort of our one-day system of voting and some of the sort of traditions that we have, and many are rooted in either the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the spirit of the nation. And so when you think about those core founding documents, are they all that we need today? I mean, is it and push further and deeper, or is it truly patriotic to sort of attach solely to those founding principles? And I just throw it out to you, like, sort of what's that balance that we're trying to achieve? Is this struggle, are these strains inevitable, or are they something that we've either failed to do or failed to see?
Well, I fundamentally believe we have a problem with civic education, because I'm from Nevada. I was born and raised in Las Vegas. Went to college in Reno. I'm a son of an immigrant. My mother came to the United States from Trinidad when she was 12 with my grandmother. They came here for a better life and opportunity. My grandmother was a domestic worker and a hairstylist, and there was a family that they met in New York who liked to gamble in Las Vegas, and that is why they got there. Shortly after I was born, I was telling this story earlier this morning. Shortly after I was born, my grandmother had a severe stroke and couldn't leave the country because she needed medical care, full-time medical care. My mother was a parent, a teenage parent with me, and she was on my grandmother's visa. She became undocumented. Over the course of my lifetime, my mom didn't get to participate in our electoral process, our political process. I didn't grow up learning about voting. My mom became a legal permanent resident some years later, and recently completed her citizenship process and voted for the first time in the 2020 election. Yes, she's a constituent. She voted for her son. Did you verify them? I don't know. Well, she told me she voted for me. I don't know who she actually voted for. But I say all that to say everyone's lived experience is different. And when we talk about our democracy, the electoral process, these founding documents that didn't include all of us to begin with, how do we make them live up to the promise of what they're supposed to do from an inclusive standpoint for women, for communities of color, particularly those of us who were not treated as full citizens in this country? And so I think we have to have a much more concerted effort all the time, not just in an election year, to talk about what it means to be a civically engaged citizen, what it requires of the individual and what it requires of the institutions of our democracy. Yes, it should happen in schools, but it should also happen in community centers, where it should happen in workforce programs. It should happen in language acquisition programs, citizenship programs. There are opportunities for us to teach this throughout many places so that it gets embedded in a way that people can trust and believe that it's for them. Part of our democracy for the people, Summer of Action, when we went across the country, it was to talk about how this democracy is for you too. It's not just for the elite. It's not just for those who buy it. It's for us. That means we have to defend it, because the very people who want to take it away from us want to take it away. Why? Because of the changing demographics of our nation and the fact that they're losing population and representation while we're growing, and they're afraid of what that means. So it is incumbent upon us to embed and to center the people into the practice of civic education and into the policy of the work that we advance and why those policies impact the people before it impacts personalities. With all due respect, I could care less about the two people at the top of the food chain running for president. I care more about the policy and how it affects the everyday people that those policies are designed to either help or not. And the more we spend time on talking about the two personalities and less time talking about the people or the policy, we're making a really, we're making a big mistake, because it's not about them. They'll be fine. I love what President Biden said recently on late night. I might be old, but his ideas are older. So let's get that out, get that over with, and let's start talking about the ideals and what it means to be a fully civically engaged citizen and individual in this country.
I think your question was, is this inevitable? And I was reflecting on history. You know, our nation's journey to form a more perfect union has been a very nonlinear, imperfect journey. You know, I look at, you know, the founding of our republic, where we, you know, what we did to black people, what we did to Native people. We make progress. And then you study the Know-Nothing movement of the mid-19th century, which was fundamentally an anti-Catholic, anti-immigrant, anti-anything that wasn't white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. We make progress. We, you know, have a civil war. We have Reconstruction. But we still have Jim Crow. We still have the Chinese Exclusion Act in the early 20th century. McCarthyism did not abate the day after Joe McCarthy got censured by the United States Senate. And so we've had these ebbs and flows. And, you know, Patty and my former boss, Senator Kennedy, used to say with frequency, you know, the party of Lincoln was once the party of civil rights. If you look at the issue of immigration, the president, one of the presidents who has been the most aggressive user of executive action to help immigrants in the last 60 years has been a guy named Ronald Reagan. The day before he left office, the last speech he gave, could have talked about anything. What did he talk about? Immigrants. To quote Lin-Manuel, we're immigrants, we get the job done. And that's what he chose to speak about. And so I bring this up because, you know, we're in one of these moments. You know, Viktor Orban should not be any presidential candidate's role model. Vladimir Putin should not be any candidate's role model. And we are in this moment, and I think the education aspect of what you're talking about is very real. You know, the biggest fault line in politics now, if you're trying to figure out, you know, crudely, you know, who are you going to support, is now educational attainment. And I know that frustrates the bejesus out of President Biden, because his values are not Wall Street values. His values are Scranton values. I was in Scranton last week, literally. And we took a picture in front of his house, actually, right before we left. And, you know, his moral compass is, you know, how do we help people like my neighbors growing up in Scranton? You know, very humble, middle-class roots. You look out for yourself. That's how you measure progress, not just how your family's doing, but how your neighbor's doing. You know, that was what he's all about. And I think what we have to do is, you know, continue to get back to that basic ethic. Because, you know, if you blow out your neighbor's candle, it doesn't make your candle shine any brighter. And we're in a moment where there's a lot of folks trying to blow out people's candles. And that's just not who we are as a nation.
Yeah, no, absolutely. How about questions from the audience? We said we'd take a few, and I think I've, Jeremy.
Well, all right. Hi, Jeremy Ferris-Raker. Thank you so much for being here. And Hi, Jeremy Paris with the Raben Group. Thank you so much for being here. I had an easier question teed up in mind, but we're going to do the 201 version of this because you already covered all the so much ground. I'm inspired by the friends I'm sitting between. My friend Kirsten Dunham, who is defending democracy at the Brennan Center every day. My friend Michael Jeans, who is working to build economic opportunity and growth in underserved communities in Cleveland, Ohio, his hometown, especially black communities, and around the country with this sustainable transition. And also, you are a civil rights lawyer, Secretary Perez, that went to be the Secretary of Labor. Your story, Congressman Horsford, about your mother and your family, I am struck by the ties between the fight for economic justice and opportunity and democracy. And I would love to hear a little bit more about how those things are twins. When we fight to change who has power, what power means, I feel like those things are just so tied together in our country and for our future. If you could talk to that for a minute, it'd be great. Thank you.
The March on Washington was a march for jobs and a march for justice. I mean, one of the things that I am most excited about in the moment we're living in is we've made dramatic progress. We're nowhere near where we need to be, but in closing the racial wealth gap. You know, we're right now, Latino and black unemployment rates are at or near historic lows. One of the pillars of the president's agenda, and he memorialized it in an executive order day one, was equity. We knew we were going to have an unprecedented amount of investment, and we needed to make sure that this investment touched every community. You know, there's this initiative called Reconnecting Communities. I grew up in Buffalo, New York. When I was a kid, they built the Kensington Expressway. The purpose of the Kensington Expressway was to make it easier for the white folks who lived in the suburbs to get downtown. Where did they build it? They went right through the east side of Buffalo. We could tell that story in Cincinnati. We can tell that story across America. And what we're doing with our investments is being very intentional. You know, you look at if Administrator Guzman from SBA were here, she would give you a treasure trove of data on the remarkable work that's been done helping black entrepreneurs, small business owners, Latino small business owners. I was in the Osage Nation 2 days ago. Great movie, by the way, telling a terrible story of an ugly underbelly of our history. And you know, this president's made more investments in Indian country than any president ever, period, hard stop. Are we where we need to be? No, but that intersectionality is something that we understand. You know, building a civil rights infrastructure and building an economic infrastructure, building a housing infrastructure. You know, all the work Raben Group is doing for, you know, loan forgiveness. You know, you look at who's benefiting from that disproportionately. It's a big deal.
I'll just add, if I could. First of all, thank you to the Brennan Center, because I just saw the recently released study that talked about the widening, it's the widening racial turnout gap because of the failure of the reauthorization of the passage of the Voting Rights Act. So there's a direct connection with participation, with the failure of the Voting Rights Act and other measures to be passed, and the fact that the Voting Rights Act provides the opportunity for all of our other rights to exist. Yes, the March on Washington was a march for jobs and freedom, and that includes economic justice, right? And so I am really, this is my love language. If I could talk about anything for the rest of my term as the Congressional Black Caucus chair, it will be to talk about the importance of democracy and economic opportunity. Because why? The same forces who are trying to take away and deny our right to vote and to weaken our participation are the same forces behind the attacks on affirmative action. The same people who want to tell someone you can't have a bottle of water in line, despite the fact that those lines to vote could be hours, are the same people who are voting, who are filing lawsuits to eliminate access to capital for black entrepreneurs. The same people who are filing the lawsuits make decisions about their health care and their body are the same people behind the lawsuits to take away relief closing the racial wealth gap in America. Because we do that, because Black and Latino and Asian consumers are the segment of the market, through business, through home ownership, through better paying jobs, and into the middle class. We would actually save more lives, because when you improve the economic conditions of people, you actually improve their health outcomes. These are the things that we have to fight for. And I'm tired of being on the defensive, fighting against them. I want to be more proactive and talking about what we're for. And this is why this administration, with all due respect, has to do more to talk about what we're going to achieve in the next 4 years. Not just what we did in the past 4 years. Progress. But people want to know, what are we going to do? How are we going to make their lives better? How am I going to be able to afford a home if I'm saddled with debt from student loans or credit cards? More entrepreneurs to be a part of this technological advancement. And what does AI mean to me and my family and my economic opportunity? You got all these big tech people, Elon Musk and others, determining what it means for them. What does it mean for our communities? We have. I know I'm getting passionate, but I'm saying it's our generation's turn to take that baton of justice that the late Congressman John Lewis and others, they ran their portion of the race. They did their job to advance civil rights and human rights and voting rights and equality rights. And now it's our generation's turn to take the baton, to run our portion of the race, to not retreat, to not go backward, but to go forward. It's on us. It's on us. And this is our moment.
Wow.
Stay tuned for tomorrow night. In response to the distinguished chair, if you want to know what we're going to do to finish the deal, I invite you to tune in to the State of the Union, because he will address that question.
All right, so we have had, this has been super inspiring, wonderful exchange of ideas. I leave here sort of prepared to do more battle, and I hope you all are too. I'm pass it back to Robert Raben, and thank you all. Thank you.
You're not getting passionate, you are passionate. Both of you. I have been supporting Mr. Perez for 25 years, more or less, and I hope it's going to be many more. And Chairman Horsford, it's a newer relationship, but it's an incredible blessing to be reminded of why we constituted this platform at the Raben Group. It's to partner with and to staff your leadership. You guys are indefatigable, and we are so blessed to have you literally out there every single day. These are extremely hard white-collar jobs, and they get up each day and go around the country doing the right thing and fighting the fight on behalf of the communities that haven't had voices like yours for years. So God bless you, and thank you. And Chrissy, thank you so much for guiding us through this. Thank you all for coming. We have a jam-packed day, lots of food, and God bless you, and go out and fight.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Donald Walker, and I have the distinct honor of serving as Raben's Chief Operating Officer. Today isn't just any day. It's a day to pause, reflect, and celebrate our journey. A journey filled with inspiration, victories, and the tireless dedication of those who paved the way for our firm's enduring legacy. From the outset, our firm has been driven by a fiery passion and an unwavering commitment to build more than just an equitable society. It's a privilege to witness, day in and day out, that here at Raben, we don't just talk the talk, we walk the walk, and that ethos serves as a beacon of inspiration for all. Reflecting on Robert's journey from a solo venture in 2002 to the thriving community we are today, one word comes to mind: wonder. Robert's charm, hustle, and wit is infectious, and it's no wonder that our firm has grown exponentially, attracting talented professionals who share our vision for a different kind of agency, one rooted in justice and equality. Over the past 2 decades, Raben has been at the forefront of redefining what's possible. Our formula for success hinges on extraordinary individuals who make up our team. It is the people who help impact progress, and you can't make progress without good people. Today, Raben stands as the largest majority-minority public affairs, strategic communications, and organizational consulting firm in the nation. We're not just committed to embedding our values, we're committed to exemplifying them, leading by example, and reshaping the faces of power and influences in America. Our mission is clear: multiply impact, diversify representation, strengthen communities, and forge new avenues of influence. I am humbled and honored to be part of this incredible team, so it's with the deepest gratitude that I recognize today's honorees for their 20+ years of exceptional contributions and unwavering dedication to our shared mission. As I bring each of our founding principles to the stage to be recognized, please know that we have chosen a very unique token of appreciation and recognition that represents who each individual and their contributions and their impact that they have made throughout their career. Come on up, Robert. You have to help me do this. So first, I would like to recognize Larry González. A distinguished figure in the realm of lobbying and strategic engagement, Larry's leadership has earned him the prestigious recognition as a top lobbyist by industry authorities such as the National Institute of Lobbying and Ethics and The Hill, holding this title from 2020 to 2023. Larry possesses a, clap for that, that's important. Larry possesses a profound understanding of coalition building and the intricacies of the policymaking process. But what we are here at Raben adore most of him is his famed one-liners, sharp wit and uncanny humor, his loyalty to family and his beloved Latino community, Chicago, and our work standards and all that he does. And the Cubs. One of my favorite things about Larry, and perhaps the most endearing qualities, is his sense of style. On any given spring day, you can count on him to show up in his Sunday best, complete with a top hat and bow tie. It's a testament to his unique charm and personality that never fails to leave a lasting impression. This is me? Yes.
I own a jacket. I just don't know where it is. Larry is loyalty to Chicago.
Loyalty or royalty?
Larry is royalty. I did appreciate the subtitles in the film. Larry is loyalty to Chicago, to his beloved Latino community, to Laura and Lorenzo, to the issues we fight for at Raben. Larry's word is his bond. More than any of us, it's his integrity, his ingrained motivation to do the right thing, which has kept us straight over the years, so to speak. Thank you, Larry.
Next, we would like to recognize a true force of nature, Laura V. Rodríguez. Laura's exceptional leadership and unwavering dedication have been instrumental in driving Raben's expansion across the nation. From Los Angeles to El Paso, Laura has fearlessly chartered new territory for our firm, leaving a mark wherever she goes. Yet, despite her remarkable achievements, Laura's humility and grace shines through in all that she does. Her tenacity is matched only by her capacity to pour into people, taking the time, giving the benefit of the doubt, and uplifting those around her. Laura's journey at this firm is a testament of the power and resilience and determination that she exemplifies. She exemplifies what it means to lead with authenticity and compassion, inspiring us all to push through boundaries and strive for excellence.
We had the loveliest farewell dinner for Laura 20 years ago. It was at an Asian fusion restaurant right around the corner. Accolades, hugs, kisses, excitement about a new adventure in Los Angeles. And about a week later, we said to each other, wait, what just happened? And we've not looked back. This has been the best rebound relationship ever. Laura's dedication to family and her raíces brought her to El Paso after a long stint in Los Angeles. Her dedication to you and to our platform is what keeps us strong and smart. We love you so much.
Now, please allow me to introduce a man who truly needs no introduction, a perennial recipient of the Best Trust Award, and a force to be reckoned with in every aspect of his life, Estuardo Rodríguez. Estuardo is a man of unwavering conviction and clarity, a direct communicator who leaves no room for guessing. As the biggest advocate for Latino rights, he embodies the values of authenticity and integrity, knowing precisely who he is and where he comes from. His commitment to his children, his family, and his community is unwavering, serving as a beacon of inspiration to us all. But Estuardo's impact extends far beyond advocacy. As the rainmaker leading business development at our firm, he sets a standard for excellence and innovation. He welcomes challenges with open arms, eager to help our team succeed and thrive. A natural problem solver, Estuardo approaches decisions with a level head, taking emotions out of the equation and finding the best solutions possible for both us and our clients.
There is going to be I don't exactly know what it's going to be, but it's going to be an alabaster and marble building on the National Mall soon. The African American Museum has literally changed the composition of the mall. It literally brings a different group of Americans and people from around the world. And the Latino Museum will do the same. There is no person in the nation who has been more important to this tribute 500 years in the making than Estuardo. Wow. We are really honored to be the wind behind his sails on this. Es's most important legacy will be his family, but damn if this museum is not a close second. And we could not be more overwhelmed to be a part of it. Thank you for everything you do, man.
The next remarkable individual is one of the best advocates I've ever had the privilege of meeting. Katharine Huffman's impact extends far beyond words. She embodies trustworthiness, authenticity, and a profound awareness of her presence in any room. Katharine sets an exemplary standard for us all. It's all right. Effortlessly breaking down barriers and building bridges through her distinct ability to connect with others. With the Midas touch in building relationships and coalitions, she navigates complexities with grace and finesse, leaving a trail of collaboration and camaraderie in her wake. What truly sets Katharine apart is her genuine concern for others. She leads with humility and compassion, always putting the needs of others first. Her approach is simple yet profound, always asking, "How can I help you?" When I came to Raben, Katharine was so open and honest and offered not only a deep understanding of the bigger picture, but invaluable support, offering background, history, and a listening ear. In her leadership, Katharine embodies the rare quality that inspires others to naturally follow. There's no hidden agenda, just a genuine desire to make the difference and uplift those around her. Please join me as we celebrate Katharine's extraordinary contributions and exemplary leadership and the profound impact she has had on our firm, our community, and the world.
Raben, does it make sense if, yes, the answer is always yes. I cannot recall any suggestion or thought or reframing that has ever come out of Katharine's head that didn't make more than sense, but set the course for what we would do. Mostly it's because Katharine is the person I know whose head is not connected to her heart, it is fused. We learn the most from Katharine. We see the most consistent impact, and every single room she enters has its integrity level rise.
And last but not least, as we come to the end of our recognition ceremony, I am thrilled to shine a spotlight on someone who truly embodies the spirit of our firm, Patty First. Patty is not just a colleague, she's the yin to my yang, and the driving force behind our collective vision of greatness. Patty's leadership is unparalleled. She possesses an innate understanding of the direction our firm needs to take to reach new heights of success. Unapologetically herself, Patty fearlessly stands up for what she believes in, even if it means making others uncomfortable. A strategist at heart, she navigates complexities with ease, always keeping our firm's best interests at the forefront. What sets Patty apart is her unique leadership style, one that empowers others to lead and create alongside her. She provides moments for teaching and learning, fostering an environment where everyone has the opportunity to grow and thrive. Affectionately known as the Robert Whisperer, Patty has a knack for truth-telling, guiding our firm with wisdom and clarity. Throughout each stage of the firm's growth, Patty has been an integral part of our journey. Her steady hand at the helm has shaped the trajectory in countless ways, ensuring that we stay true to our values and vision. Thank you, Patty, for being a true beacon of inspiration and leadership. Let's all congratulate her for her guidance, wisdom, and unwavering commitment to our shared mission.
I don't have one quick anecdote or phrase for Patty. I have hundreds. It will be 30 years soon, and hopefully another 30 more. Patty brings a ferocious mind, a clear-eyed measure of success, and a gracious candor to the hardest of the work. There are tens of millions of women with access to safe reproductive care in this nation because of Patty First. There are immigrants safe and secure with their families because of her work. There are not-for-profit professionals liberated from tens of billions of dollars of debt because of her and her colleagues' work. And there are countless people who have been appropriately told at the hardest moments, okay, that's fine, but let's try this, with fantastic problem solving and judgment. Thank you, Patty. We love you so much. I made you a dish.
Let's give our founding principals one more round of applause. Throughout our history, we've been standing and fighting in many principles, strengthening the power of diversity in the firm and in the world, leaning into an entrepreneurial spirit of every person who walks in the door, upending power so that every voice is heard and reflected in our democracy. We're going to hear from these Raben veterans about what it means to them to have been a founding principal here at the firm.
Thank you, Donald. Oh. Am I on? Yep, I'm on.
Make sure they're on.
They are. Hi, everyone. First of all, it is so great to see so many Raben alums here. I think that's one of the huge strengths of our firm is that people leave and they go on to do amazing things, and then we still see them and we still work with them, and it's like a big family. So, Michael, Dave, thank you all for coming. Okay, so we are going to talk about our experiences with Raben and kind of tell the story of the firm. And we're each going to talk about why we joined the firm, some pivotal moments, what we're looking forward to in the future. And it's my honor, having been employee number 3, to talk about like what we were at the beginning, at the very beginning of Raben. And what this whole kind of experiment that we entered into together was all about and like. So I've known Robert, as he said, for almost 30 years, something like that, a long time. And when I joined Raben, I had been working with Robert in the Office of Legislative Affairs at the Department of Justice. And when Bush v. Gore happened, much to our surprise, I actually went to the voting section and I litigated voting rights cases for a couple of years. And after having spent 2.5 years in the voting section, it was very clear to me that the Ashcroft administration and I had a very different concept of what the Voting Rights Act was and covered. And that things were not necessarily going to go well for the Civil Rights Division. And maybe I should start thinking about doing something else. So at that time, right, the private sector model was basically you go to a lobbying firm and make them a lot of money and maybe work on some stuff you care about if you're lucky. Or you go to a nonprofit and get worked to death for not enough money to pay your student loans. So just for example, right, which is why we now have the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Act, right, Michael? So Robert and I went to dinner in Adams Morgan, and I said, I think I'm going to leave. I was starting to think about it, and he said, well, come join me. And I said, okay, sure. Yeah, let's do it. Without thinking very much about it, which honestly, I was reflecting on this earlier this week, and I think that the reason that I was so comfortable making that leap immediately with Robert was because over the number of years that I had known him at that point, he's, and still to this day, the only man I've ever worked for who, when I would come to him with a sticky work problem, would turn to me and say, well, what do you recommend? Instead of telling me how it should be done or all of the things that he recommended. And then when I would give him my recommendation, he would actually do that thing, which was pretty amazing. And I think probably a lot of you in this room have experienced that, well, what do you recommend question from Robert too. It's one of the reasons we love him. And that was really rare in 2003 anyway, and I think probably still is. So when I joined, it was me, and it was Robert, and it was the fabulous Nancy Biermeyer, who started a month before me. And a month or so later, we were joined by Melody Barnes, and then later by Katharine Huffman. And we had sublet a space at 17th and L Streets, Northwest, from Ann Walker Marchant. Raben and I had cubicles. And Katharine had a half cubicle that we made out of some file cabinets and a desk. Was it even a desk, actually, or was it like, I don't know, a door frame that we like stuck on top of something? Anyway. Nancy had a shared office, and Melody had her own office because she's Melody Barnes. I mean, you know, we're going to give her her own office. But at some point pretty early on, we sat down and we talked about, like, what are we doing here? You know, what do we want to be? We definitely were not at the point where we considered ourselves a firm. We were still very much an experiment. And we didn't know, are we going to be around in 6 months or not? But we knew that we agreed on 4 things. We wanted to work on hard public policy issues that we cared deeply about. We wanted to change who holds power in DC and later beyond DC, because we all held identities that were not in the rooms of power at that time in DC. And we wanted to get paid enough to be comfortable, but we weren't really in it for the money. We were all very clear on that. And we wanted to keep our senses of humor throughout all of it. So, you know, those ended up being the values on which the firm was founded, but also the values we still have today, which I find very cool. So what started as just a few of us soon grew much bigger, and we became more intentional about building a diverse, progressive firm that was based on impact, rather than based on, you know, making the most money that we could. And to do that, we focused on hiring really brilliant people, like all of the people up here. And I find it really great and amazing. I was thinking about this morning, that like we were all involved in the next person's interview, right?
You couldn't come unless you'd interviewed with
everyone at the firm.
I still haven't quite recovered from that.
Right. So, you know, we interviewed, like Katharine and I interviewed S, and then the 3 of us interviewed Laura, and the 4 of us interviewed Larry. Anyway. Which I think is really cool. So we focused on hiring these brilliant people, and a lot of the brilliant people in this room who shared our values and were willing to enter into this experiment with us. And at some point we realized we were a firm. And that what we were doing was really still based on those same original values, based in this, you know, strategy of hiring people who believed in our same vision and were willing to experiment with us. And at some point over the last 20 years, we realized that we had built this, and it's pretty cool. It's lasted. So far, so good. Yeah, so far the experiment's working, I think. What do y'all think? Yeah. So Katharine, I'm going to kick it over to you so you can tell us the next part of the story.
Great. Hi, everyone. So great to be here with all of you, and just so wonderful to see so many. The Old Home Week of all of this is really, really awesome. So really happy to be here. When I joined the Raben Group, as Patty said, I was the 5th employee, and the way that came about, I was coming out of having worked for the Drug Policy Alliance, a nonprofit. I was a lawyer. I had only worked in nonprofits, so at that time was unique, and still am kind of unusual as someone at the firm who has never worked in government, either on the Hill or in the administration or in a state, even government role. So I was coming out of, you know, an organization, and actually the way that I met Robert was that the then ED of that organization, who was looking for someone to run the DC office, in which I had already said I was not going to do, said, oh, you know, there's this guy, Bob Raben. I've heard he's really smart and knows a lot of people, so maybe talk to him. Maybe he has some suggestions for how we, you know, who we should hire to run the DC office. So thankfully, I don't think I ever called him Bob Raben. I think I wrote Dear Robert in that first email or whatever. I must have, because he responded. But we met for coffee, and I said, you know, hi, so nice to meet you. Ethan thought you might have suggestions. And right away, Robert said to me, well, I mean, I have suggestions, but it depends, like, what do you want your DC office to be? Are you, are you the visionary, outspoken, visible leaders? Are you the back office for congressional leaders? Sort of listing off the different things, and my eyes lit up. I was like, this is strategy. Like, this is where you start. You think about, what do we want to be? What are we trying to get to? Then how do we get there? And I was just amazed. The next thing that happened was that Robert then said to me, so wait, why aren't you taking this role? And right away, I look back at it now, I'm like, okay, so we did strategy and therapy literally in the first 15 minutes, which anyone who knows Robert knows that's how it works, right? So by the end of that conversation, I had another experience that I've since learned many people have had coming into Raben, which was, as we were leaving, Robert said, well, why don't you come work with me? And I spent the next 2 days thinking, did I get a job offer? Did I not get a job offer? I don't know. It turns out I did, but also I didn't, because I hadn't interviewed with the other 4 people, so that still had to come. But thankfully, I got brave enough to send the follow-up email and say, hey, if you were serious about that. I labored over that email for a long time, Raven.
Did you sign it sincerely, Katharine Huffman? Which is how she
Probably.
signs all her emails.
Maybe, I don't know. And was lucky enough to come to the Raben Group from there. And what this platform was inviting me to do even then was to bring my own passion. My background was on criminal justice issues, but I had always approached that from a place of, this is a system where all the problems that we are not dealing with in our society piles up. If you don't deal with economic justice, if you don't deal with educational justice, if you don't deal with healthcare, all these things, here's where you wind up. That drew me, but the connectedness of all of those different things was something that I really believed in and cared about and knew was really crucial. And coming to a place where there were folks already, and this is true times hundreds at this point, people who were working on, were deep experts in a whole range of different issues, all of which I knew were connected to things that I knew the most about and was most passionate about personally, but giving me the opportunity, giving all of us the opportunity to tap into that expertise across the board on the substance was just crucial and was exactly what I was looking for, and I think is a big part of why we're able to do a good job for our clients and for the issues that we care about. But the other part of that, the connectedness isn't just the substance of the issues. The connectedness is, the generosity of the people at the firm and the ways that the different, the willingness that folks brought to sharing their ideas, sharing their connections, all these things. If I'm looking for a connection to some Hill office, and this happens, as of yesterday, email all Raben, hey, does anybody know someone in whatever office? And, to come to find out down the road that there are places where those types of relationships are protected or sort of monetized or whatever they are, was a shock to me because I had never experienced that here. And that continues to be just a hugely important part of the way that we do our work and the way that we go about our business. And I think it's what makes us really great at what we do. And the fact that we've been able to continue to grow that, I'll hand it over to you, and to hold those values, those principles, those ideas as we've grown is definitely the reason that I'm still here, and why I hope that we will continue to grow and continue to have even more impact in the next 20 years. So, yes.
Thank you, Katharine. Just a quick little background, because I want to talk about the importance of communications here at the firm, which I came on after meeting Robert, realizing that's the piece that I was bringing to the table at that time, to the small party. I'm actually a DC native. I still call the Washington Airport DCA, not Reagan. I sold newspapers in Adams Morgan as a kid on Sundays. My family came from Peru, which is why we're having Peruvian chicken here. Not really, but I'm taking credit for it. And I grew up thinking, seeing, breathing politics, as well as understanding the disparities in our communities. Adams Morgan, that whole area was not what it is today. I think it still could be better than it was when I was growing up, but it was a small community. We had South Americans, Italians, Cubans. It was a nice, beautiful mix, just very much like a Francis Ford Coppola movie. Everyone knew each other, and it was the older matriarch in the neighborhood would yell at everyone to bring their kids out because the police were throwing a Christmas party, and she wanted to bring all the kids over there, and that's how I grew up. We were storytellers just among our own communities, sharing. And that carried with me throughout my career, my life, everything I did. I went to law school because that was what I was supposed to do as a first generation. My parents came from Peru. We got here, here's what you're supposed to do, and just go do it. Not how to do it, just you're supposed to go do it. And so I did. At the heart of it all was always a storyteller, which is how I became an actor. SAG-AFTRA. I still get harassed by my peers because I was on The Wire and they share that clip around.
It's amazing. We'll send it out. It's
yeah.
amazing.
So it was at an art, and they stereotyped me too. I was it was 100%. But mixing all those things together really is what I always was looking for. I volunteered to work with the Democratic committee and the presidential campaigns, and it was always communications. How do we tell stories that connect with people? And coming to a place like this, I didn't realize it at the time, but that's really what it's been about. Taking the policy and just making it tangible so people understood it. Even to this day, everything that I work on with clients, it's still, tell me how does it affect the people in the community? Give me some anecdotes that I can work with so I can better tell a story. And I met Robert at an in-home art gallery showing at one of our dear friends' home. And it was very similar, just what do you do? How are you doing it? Are you having fun? You know, you really didn't know if you were being asked out on a date or, you know, you're actually, you know, it's DC coffee talk, right? And so we dated a few times. And the thing is, Robert always leaves the door open. I'm not going to break into the Bruno Mars song here, but he left the door open. And it really was just like, come and explore, create, let's think. And there was never a job description. I don't think we had a job description until 10, 15 years later. There was never a job description. It was, what do you do? Here's what we do. Let's see what we can do together. And what I came in to do was the comms piece because that's what was missing at the time. He knew it, I knew it, a few other people knew it, but I was used to you're hired, here's what we've got, here's what you should do, let's check in and see how the progress is going. What he did was, welcome, here's the team, you've gone through the interview process, everyone is welcoming you, and then he's like, I'm leaving for 2 weeks for work project, so good luck. And that would not have worked with anyone. It works with people that are hungry, that want, and I honestly, it's taken me a long time to do the therapy, but the realization that as a first generation, as I was, any environment you put me into, I needed to succeed, to prove something. And it wasn't until later that I realized with Robert, I didn't have to prove it. We were a collaborative effort. As long as everybody was delivering and doing their part, and even if you weren't, we're happy to help you do your part. The communications has grown further than I think we had even expected, thanks to the amazing people up here and out there and around the country now, because we embraced the reality of and the utility of storytelling. Without the storytelling, nothing will get done, whether it's elections or policy making or at the local level, at the federal level. We're storytellers because in the end, you know, we want people to understand there's real impact and not just politics in DC. Thank you. Let me turn it over to you, Laura.
Hi, everyone. For me, I want to elevate Raben's entrepreneurial spirit and the freedom that he gave us to really build that book of business and to find those clients that we really shared our values with. For me, prior to joining Raben, I had been on Capitol Hill for 10 years, and I also went to university here. So I was going on like 14 years at Raben, or 14 years in DC. And at that point, I had outgrown Washington, DC, but I had not outgrown the Raben Group. So I had seen the potential that we could have in the States. So pitched the idea to Robert, and he gave us the green light. And I moved to Los Angeles in 2005 and opened up our California practice group. we quickly became the communications departments for a lot of civil rights organizations that had a presence in Southern California. So at that time, back in early 2000s, we were at the forefront of fighting back all the anti-immigrant ordinances that were happening at the time. And we're helping nonprofits, helping executive directors launch nonprofits that wanted to tackle criminal justice reform. And soon after, we expanded our footprint to New York, and now we have offices in the Bay Area, Cleveland, Ohio, and next year we're going to be celebrating 10 years in Texas. So for me, it's been just great to see, an executive that really pushes us to follow what's in our heart, to work on projects that you have, shared values with, and it's really very rare. Been very fortunate. I see a lot of familiar faces and faces that I haven't seen in 20 years, Melissa Diaz. But it's just so great to see everyone here celebrating the 20 years of Raben. So I'm looking at the clock. I'm also the timekeeper. I'm going to turn things over to Larry so he can help close us out.
Wait, I was told I had 20 minutes. So. There's often criticism among ourselves in the Latino community about, I'm sure everyone here has heard the crabs in a bucket mentality, that we often don't want to help each other. So I want to give Estuardo a lot of credit here, because he's actually, all the credit. He's actually the one who introduced me to Robert. Initially, I was on my third interview to become the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Executive Director, and I was all excited. I'm going to be the next Executive Director, although Arturo Vargas, who's still the ED at Naleo, reminded me, you realize you can have 23 bosses if you get this job, right? There were only 23 members at the time. And anyway, Estuardo called me and said, hey, I know you're doing this thing, but just slow down a little bit. You got to meet Robert Raben. He's putting together this great thing, and I think you'd fit perfectly. And I said, okay, I'll take a chance. So met Robert for breakfast at Pete's Diner, which, by the way, it was a breakfast. Sounds like everybody else here got a dinner, so I've always kind of remembered that. But no, we had a great time. I mean, I felt very comfortable. First of all, I still love Pete's Diner anyway, but just felt comfortable about all the things he was talking about. I was looking for a place just to continue the Latino advocacy work that I was doing at Naleo. Kind of wanted to move away from immigration a little bit, which I didn't in the first few years at the firm, but that was fine. Patty would know it's a very high burnout coalition, the Immigration Reform Coalition. But anyway, just really appreciated the things, and it was the same approach. It's like, look, I appreciate, he said to me, I appreciate the things you've been doing in the community, and if you're interested in joining us, let's continue the conversation. And same thing, but it took me about a week to compose an email after I had consulted with a few who I thought were friends. Remember the crabs in the bucket mentality, asking them, so if I become a lobbyist, what do I do? Or how much should I get paid, and all these things. And most people were like, you'll figure it out, without necessarily giving me a lot of advice. So I did have to figure it out. But I think, as Laura mentioned, the piece that appealed to me is, yes, I could continue my work, but it's through sort of the entrepreneurial, right? We can come, we can find those folks, those organizations, those entities that we want to work for, and hopefully they will bring us on board and we can continue that work. And I was just looking for something that I could work on that was bigger than myself. And I found that here. I know this is a celebration today, but I have a huge sense of gratitude for everyone that I've learned from. And just playing off of what, I think it was Katharine or Patty, I apologize, but the idea of Robert saying to you, what do you think? I want to learn from you. No one had ever said that to me before. And so it was very refreshing, and have always continued to carry that, and just really excited about the future of this organization as we grow. But that was the one piece that has always appealed to me, and his belief in me and my abilities. As children, when we grow up, we always need someone who believes in us. And Robert has believed in me, and I will always appreciate that, so thank you.
I think you're up, Larry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're continuing.
So, what do you say about your boss in recognition of 20 years, and in a world with so much advancement in technology?
Robert really wants to leave the room right now, but he can't.
It's really short. It's going to be really short.
Well, Robert, we decided to ask ChatGPT to write a short poem about a leader who is witty, dry, but advocates for all human rights. He is committed to everyone following their passion. It's a juxtaposition of serious, authentic, but fun. So here it is, a poem about Robert.
In halls of power, a leader stands, witty and dry, with deft, quick hands. I love the look on your face right now. A champion for rights, he takes his stand. In every heart, he plants the seed of demand.
Serious in purpose. Serious in purpose, authentic in grace. A smile on his face, a clever embrace. Advocating for all with passion ablaze. He guides with wisdom through life's intricate maze.
In the realm of wit, his words dance and sway, a dry humor that lights up the darkest day. But beneath the jest, a commitment so true, to human rights, he weaves a vibrant hue.
This is where we know that AI is not actually going to take over all of our jobs. It's going to be okay. For every dream, every passion he cheers, a leader who banishes all doubts and fears. In the symphony of life, he's the conductor, balancing the serious with humor's allure.
With a heart that beats for justice and more, he opens every closed and guarded door. A juxtaposition, there's that word again, of levity and might, a leader who leads with wisdom and light. Author ChatGPT.
So Robert, come on up. You gotta come on up. So we're here to say thank you and to celebrate you. And
Don't you want to hear the Gemini poem?
no,
No, sorry.
I want to hear you. But wait, Donald's got to talk too. Just
Can you help? Okay, thanks. So, in the spirit of the firm and the spirit of a lot of things that we do, we decided to get Robert a token of our appreciation from the firm.
More than a token.
It is. Shh, just let me do this. The ballot box was created by Charlie Palmer, one of today's most sought-after African-American artists of our time. It was created for the upcoming election to remind African-Americans about our voting rights. He wanted to show that in 1965, African-Americans knew how important it was to vote. They wore their Sunday's best and took their children to the polls. If you get up close to the image, you can see the images of a middle passage and segregation signs. One says, "No dogs, no Negroes, no Mexicans." Charlie Palmer's work focuses on the visual storytelling of African-American history, pushing the boundaries of creativity. The artist's quote is, "Art should change the temperature in a room." I'd also like to thank Jackie from Overdue Recognition Art Gallery in Bowie, Maryland, for helping to provide this piece and some of the other pieces that you see around the office today.
That's me. I'm up. I'm up. Yeah, it's you. That was a fantastic eulogy. We need to work on the poem. Anyway, thank you all. You've been here plenty, and well, I won't make a joke about it. I do want my funeral to be shorter, more food, more music, and then, but I do want it to be a work day. Go back to work. That is really fantastic. I'm gonna tell you why that's really fantastic. I think about these men and women constantly. Constantly. I don't obviously know these men and women, but these are men and women who you can imagine risk everything. They literally risk everything. These are school teachers beholden to a school district that can fire them in a heartbeat for voting. I mean, I won't go through every one of them. I think about this constantly, because we are in the business of working as partners with NGOs and corporations to make change. And how often you get problematization. Can't do that, we need a grant, all the things that we sort of take our Percocet and work through. And you compare that to what these people, or people trying to come across our border, fleeing poverty, or all the things. All the things. Patty told me that Katharine Clark is going to bring a woman to the State of the Union who cannot get an abortion in her state, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, thank you. That's just perfect. I mean, it's beautiful art, but for me, it's more, that's courage. And what we're doing enables people with courage. Sometimes it requires courage. We are the only firm I know of that has had lost clients on death row, and I mean, we take on some really hard stuff. Anyway, you've been sitting long enough. Thank you so much for coming, but your coming is just a representation of your incredible support. Our lawyer was here, she left. Did we get a subpoena? Did we get another subpoena? But people, I won't go through each one of you, but leaders who are making unbelievable difference in the communities that we fight for. I'm incredibly inspired. It is amazing to me. I said it in the video, I'll end with it. When people join our enterprise, either as an employee or a consultant or an independent contractor or not a W-2 or all the things I've had to learn over the years, but mostly the, quote, clients, the partners who entrust us with the hard stuff, I'm always in awe. I'm always in awe that people choose to trust us to fight for their rights, their liberty, their freedom, their economic success, all the things. And I hope to always be in awe of that. But thank you all very much. Thank you for making this very special. And to the 5 of you and those who followed close behind, God bless you all. On behalf of me and our founding fathers, whom we honor, thank you all so much for coming. Thank you for a beautiful program.